1. Puma Punku. Let's talk about the shattered skeleton of a civilization completely erased from the high Andes Mountains of Bolivia. You are standing nearly 13,000 feet above sea level, surrounded by the remnants of a catastrophic natural event that wiped out this ancient society. Archaeologists believe a massive, sudden wall of water, a prehistoric flood of biblical proportions, slammed into this mountaintop city, instantly burying it in deep, suffocating mud. You can still see how the violent earth tossed these massive, impossible stones around like scattered dice. If you walk up to one of the main platform stones, you will immediately notice the sheer, mind-bending scale of it. One of these blocks is roughly the size of a fully loaded city bus. The stone is a mix of red sandstone and gray andesite, but the texture is what stops you in your tracks. If you run your hand across the surface, it feels exactly like the smooth glass of your smartphone screen. The corners are so perfectly sharp you could practically cut a piece of paper on them. The real power is in the structural engineering that still defies modern science. These massive, bus-sized stones were carved with perfect, interlocking geometric joints. They snap together tightly like giant, prehistoric Lego bricks without using a single drop of mortar. For humans, the danger of exploring these ruins initially seems quite mild, almost like walking through a messy, disorganized construction site in your neighborhood. You might just trip over a rock and scrape your knee. But when you understand the sheer mass hovering above the excavated trenches, it becomes terrifying. A sudden shift in the soil could bring a 130-ton slab of rock crashing down on you in a fraction of a second. This environment inflicts damage in highly unpredictable ways. The thin, freezing mountain air will quickly attack your lungs, leaving you gasping for breath just by walking. Unstable ground can easily ambush you as you navigate the steep, excavated pits. Gravity is the invisible enemy here. The heavy, overhanging rocks just wait for a tiny tremor to let loose. If you spot a fracture in the dirt above you, it is already too late. The collapsing mud and stone will violently chase you down the slope, burying you instantly. The most bizarre behavior of these stones is found inside the drill holes. The holes bored into this hyper-hard andesite rock are perfectly evenly spaced and show absolutely no chisel marks, suggesting they used diamond-tipped rotary drills thousands of years before they were invented. But if you think scattered mountain blocks are mathematically impossible, the next monument is a giant mountain of math right in the middle of the desert. 2. The Great Pyramid blocks. Let's talk about the ultimate survivor of catastrophic time and human history, sitting directly on the scorching sands of the Giza Plateau in Egypt. This wasn't destroyed by a sudden cataclysm, but it stands as a fortress against the slow, grinding death of millennia. The original society that hauled these stones faced brutal, blistering heat and Nile floods that regularly wiped out lesser settlements. They built this impossible structure to conquer the chaos of nature itself. When you stand at the base of the pyramid, the size of a single block is overwhelming. Compare it to a standard kitchen refrigerator, but made entirely of dense, crushing limestone. There are over 2.3 million of these refrigerator-sized blocks stacked perfectly on top of each other. The color is a baked, dusty yellow, but thousands of years ago, they were encased in bright, blinding white limestone that reflected the sun like a giant mirror. Surprisingly, the power is in the acoustic resonance and earthquake-proof design of the entire structure. The blocks fit together so tightly with a ball-and-socket engineering technique that this ancient skyscraper easily absorbs massive thermal expansions and violent tectonic tremors. The danger of this monument feels mild at first, much like feeling the radiant heat coming off an asphalt driveway on a summer afternoon. You feel warm, maybe a little dehydrated. But if you try to scale these massive blocks, the reality of the danger becomes absolutely terrifying. A single misstep means tumbling down a jagged, razor-sharp staircase of stone that stretches hundreds of feet into the sky. The pyramid and its surrounding environment inflict damage through sheer exhaustion and environmental hostility. The unrelenting desert sun will aggressively attack your skin the moment you step out of the shadows. The shifting, unstable sands constantly ambush your footing as you walk the perimeter. Deep inside the dark, unventilated tunnels, stagnant air and claustrophobia wait to suffocate the unprepared explorer. If you spot a crumbling edge on one of the upper tiers, you must freeze. The dizzying heights will chase away your sense of balance, threatening to pull you over the edge into a fatal plunge. The most bizarre, unexpected behavior of these stones is how they regulate temperature. No matter how violently hot the Egyptian desert gets outside, the internal temperature of the pyramid's king chamber remains locked at a constant 68 degrees Fahrenheit, acting like an ancient, self-powered air conditioner. If a mountain of stone in the desert blows your mind, the next carving is completely isolated on one of the most remote, doomed islands on the planet. 3. The Moai statues. Let's talk about the silent, brooding giants of Easter Island, marooned in the middle of the vast Pacific Ocean. The society that carved these massive faces suffered one of the most terrifying ecological disasters in human history. They completely deforested their island to roll these stones, destroying their own ecosystem. When the trees vanished, the soil washed away, starvation set in, and a once thriving civilization collapsed into total chaos and warfare. To understand the scale of a Moai statue, picture a 3-story apartment building carved out of a single piece of rock. They are carved from compressed volcanic ash called tuff. The color is a deep, porous grayish-brown, and the texture is remarkably rough, like touching a giant sheet of coarse sandpaper. Some of them even wear massive red stone hats, weighing as much as 2 elephants, perfectly balanced on their flat heads. The real power is their mysterious ability to literally walk across the island. Native legends claimed the statues walked to their platforms, and modern physics has proven that by tying ropes to the head, ancient builders could rock the multi-ton statues back and forth, making them walk upright down the dirt roads. The immediate danger to a human walking among them feels incredibly mild, perhaps like standing next to a large oak tree in a public park. You feel entirely safe. But the terrifying truth hits you when you realize these statues are highly unstable. After centuries of erosion, the ground beneath them is giving way. If a 3-story block of solid volcanic rock tips over while you are standing underneath it, you will be crushed flat instantly. The treacherous island terrain inflicts damage at every turn. Sudden, violent tropical storms will attack from the ocean without any warning. Hidden volcanic craters and deep, grassy pits ambush hikers who wander off the main trails. Loose volcanic rocks wait on the slopes, ready to snap an ankle. If you spot a statue leaning dangerously, you must back away slowly. The collapsing cliffs along the coastline constantly chase the statues into the sea, threatening to drag you down into the violent, churning surf with them. The bizarre fact that completely turns everything upside down is that the giant heads you see are only half the story. Archaeologists dug down and discovered that these statues actually have massive, fully carved bodies buried completely underground, covered in complex, unknown tattoos. The next carvings aren't faces, but perfect, impossible geometry hidden deep within a deadly jungle. 4. The stone spheres of Costa Rica. Let's talk about the perfectly round, mysterious stone balls scattered across the dense, humid Diquis Delta of Costa Rica. The civilization that painstakingly shaped these stones was completely wiped out by the arrival of foreign diseases and the chaotic aftermath of the Spanish conquest. The jungle quickly reclaimed their cities, wrapping thick vines around their greatest achievements and hiding them from the world for centuries. The size of these spheres varies, but the largest ones are the size of a standard compact car, like a Volkswagen Beetle, but perfectly spherical and made of solid gabbro rock. The stone is a dark, speckled gray, and the texture is impossibly smooth. It feels exactly like a polished bowling ball, which is absolutely mind-blowing considering they were carved using only other rocks. Surprisingly, the power is the mathematical perfection of their shape. Without any metal tools, lasers, or computer measuring devices, the ancient carvers managed to create spheres that are up to 96% perfectly round. For humans, the danger of the sphere itself seems practically non-existent, as mild as sitting next to a garden gnome in your backyard. They just sit there. But the terrifying reality is the environment guarding them. The spheres act as heavy anchors in a jungle that is actively trying to kill you. The ground around them is soft, sinking mud that can trap you in the middle of nowhere. The jungle ecosystem inflicts severe damage on anyone trying to find these stones. Swarms of disease-carrying mosquitoes fiercely attack any exposed skin. Highly venomous fer-de-lance snakes perfectly camouflage themselves in the dead leaves and ambush explorers who step too close to the monuments. Brutal humidity and heat wait to drain your body of all its water. If you spot a sinkhole forming near a heavy sphere, step back immediately. The dense, suffocating jungle canopy will quickly chase away the daylight, leaving you totally blind and stranded in predator territory. The most bizarre, unexpected behavior surrounding these stones is what happened when people first found them. Believing local legends that the stones contained hidden gold, people blew them up with dynamite, only to find absolutely solid rock all the way through to the core. Now, the next ancient carve is not built from the ground up, but sliced straight down into the living earth. 5. Petra. Let's talk about the legendary Rose City, hidden deep within a narrow, winding desert canyon in southern Jordan. The Nabateans who carved this impossible city were masters of survival, but their society was ultimately wiped out by a series of devastating, cataclysmic earthquakes that shattered their vital water systems and brought their massive stone ceilings crashing down. When you look at the famous treasury building, its size is staggering. Imagine taking a modern 6-story office building and pushing it directly into the side of a sheer cliff face. The color is a vibrant, swirling mix of salmon pink, deep red, and burnt orange. If you touch the canyon walls, the sandstone feels incredibly fragile, rubbing off like coarse kinetic sand on your fingertips. The real power is the ancient, highly advanced water routing system. The builders carved miles of invisible gutters and hidden dams directly into the rocks, completely controlling the lethal flash floods that regularly destroy these canyons, turning a deadly hazard into an endless drinking supply. The danger of walking through Petra seems incredibly mild at first, like taking a warm afternoon stroll through a dry riverbed. It is quiet and beautiful, but the terrifying danger is the sudden, unpredictable geology. You are trapped in a narrow gorge with walls hundreds of feet high. If an earthquake hits, those beautifully carved 6-story facades will violently collapse outward, instantly crushing the valley floor under thousands of tons of jagged pink rock. Nature inflicts rapid, merciless damage in this canyon. Sudden flash floods attack from miles away, sending a roaring wall of water down the narrow corridor with nowhere for you to escape. The scorching midday sun will ambush you the moment you step out of the canyon's shadow. Falling rocks constantly wait on the high ledges to drop on unsuspecting tourists. If you spot dark clouds gathering overhead, run for high ground. The rising floodwaters will ruthlessly chase you through the winding stone maze. The bizarre fact that completely turns everything upside down is that the massive urn at the top of the treasury building is completely covered in modern bullet holes. For centuries, Bedouin tribes shot at the solid stone carving, fully believing it was a giant hollow piñata filled with ancient pharaoh's gold. If carving into a cliff face is impressive, our next carving took an entire mountain and cut it straight down to the floor. 6. Kailasa Temple. Let's talk about the absolute peak of megalithic madness, located in the Ellora caves of Maharashtra, India. This incredible structure survived the brutal, violent religious wars and invasions that wiped out neighboring empires, standing resilient because it was quite literally too heavy and too massive for enemy armies to destroy. To grasp the size of Kailasa, imagine pulling a massive, modern football stadium completely out of solid rock, leaving the stadium intact in the center of the hole. The temple is dark gray basalt rock, violently carved out of the Sharanandri hills. The texture is intricately jagged, covered in millions of tiny, razor-sharp chisel marks that form thousands of life-sized elephants, gods, and terrifying demons covering every single square inch. The real power is the sheer, impossible timeline of its creation. Unlike normal buildings that are built from the ground up, this temple was carved entirely from the top down. They removed 200,000 tons of solid bedrock with simple hammers and chisels without making a single structural mistake. The danger for a human visiting here feels wonderfully mild, like walking through a heavily decorated museum courtyard. You feel enclosed and protected. But the terrifying reality is the structural weight hovering directly above your head. You are walking under massive, solid rock bridges and balconies that have no modern steel supports. A severe structural failure here wouldn't just drop a roof, it would drop the literal mountain down onto your skull. The environment inflicts damage slowly but fiercely. The oppressive, stagnant heat inside the deep rock pit will fiercely attack your hydration levels. Slippery, algae-covered stone steps easily ambush your footing during the humid monsoon season. Dark, unlit carved caverns wait on the edges of the courtyard, hiding deep drop-offs. If you spot a massive crack forming in one of the supporting elephant pillars, back away. The crumbling basalt will aggressively chase you out of the corridor as the heavy ceiling gives way. The most bizarre behavior of this site is that an invading emperor once ordered 1,000 men to completely destroy the temple. They hacked at the solid rock pillars for 3 continuous years, but the stone was so impossibly hard they couldn't even dent it, and they eventually just gave up and went home. If top-down carving sounds exhausting, our next location features the absolute heaviest cut stones ever moved by human hands. 7. Baalbek megaliths. Let's talk about the terrifyingly massive foundation stones of the Temple of Jupiter, sitting in the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon. The original builders of this colossal platform were lost to history, wiped out by extreme tectonic shifts and the violent rise and fall of the Roman Empire, which built their own temples directly on top of the ancient ruins. When you stand next to the famous Stone of the Pregnant Woman, left in the nearby quarry, the size is almost nauseating. It is the size of a modern nuclear submarine, carved into a perfect rectangle. It weighs a staggering 1,000 tons. The stone is a pale, sandy limestone, deeply pitted and scarred by wind and time. It feels rough and gritty, tearing at your skin if you scrape your hand violently across it. Surprisingly, the power is the completely unexplained lifting technology. These submarine-sized blocks were not only cut, but they were somehow lifted perfectly off the ground and fitted into a retaining wall 20 feet in the air with such precision that you cannot fit a razor blade between them. The danger of standing near these stones feels incredibly mild, like leaning against a concrete retaining wall at a shopping mall. They're just big rocks. But it becomes utterly terrifying when you look up at the towering Roman columns balancing on top of them. The region is highly seismically active. A major earthquake would send 100-ton chunks of marble plummeting from the sky, instantly pulverizing anything on the ground below into fine pink dust. The harsh valley environment inflicts damage without mercy. The blinding, unshaded Mediterranean sun will relentlessly attack your vision. Unstable, collapsing Roman debris will ambush you if you step off the cleared archaeological paths. Deep excavation pits wait like traps for anyone not paying attention to their surroundings. If you spot a tremor shaking the dust off the high columns, run for the open fields. The falling masonry will violently chase you out of the temple courtyard. The bizarre fact that completely turns everything upside down is that despite thousands of hours of research, absolutely zero historical records, blueprints, or ancient texts exist explaining how the original stones were moved. The builders completely vanished and took the greatest engineering secret in human history with them. For our final impossible carving, we leave the dry deserts and head into a city built entirely on cursed water. Nan Madol. Let's talk about the floating ghost city of the Pacific, built on a coral reef off the coast of Pohnpei in Micronesia. The tyrannical Saudeleur dynasty that ruled this artificial city was ultimately overthrown, and their floating capital was mysteriously abandoned to the violent, rising tides and devastating typhoons that battered the coastline. The size of this complex is staggering. Imagine the skyline of downtown Manhattan, but entirely pushed over and laid flat on top of a shallow ocean reef. The builders used massive, hexagonal basalt columns that look exactly like giant, fossilized Lincoln logs. The rock is pitch black, slick with bright green moss, and the texture is slimy and jagged to the touch. The real power is the sheer defiance of ocean mechanics. They built 92 artificial islands on top of a highly destructive coral reef, moving 750,000 tons of volcanic rock across the open ocean without wheels, pulleys, or metal tools of any kind. The danger of navigating this ruined city feels deceptively mild, exactly like paddling a canoe through a quiet, slow-moving river. It is beautiful and calm. But the terrifying truth is the water beneath you. The ancient sea walls are collapsing, and the violent tidal pulls can suddenly drag you out into the open, deadly ocean through the crumbling stone canals. The aquatic environment inflicts dangerous damage to your body constantly. The razor-sharp coral hidden under the dark water will violently attack your bare feet. Highly poisonous stonefish perfectly ambush waders who step into the flooded ruins. Thick, rotting mangrove roots wait to trap your boat in the narrowest channels. If you spot a sudden drop in the water level, hold onto the walls. A massive incoming rogue wave will aggressively chase you through the canals, smashing you against the black basalt pillars. The most bizarre, unexpected behavior of this ancient city is that local islanders absolutely refuse to go near it after dark. They firmly believe the entire stone complex is highly radioactive with dark magic, and anyone who disrespects the ruins will be struck down by sudden, violent sickness.